to you from deepest, darkest Johannesburg, South Africa. We've been reminding our friends around the world over the last week or so that here in South Africa we've been having a very high level of power cuts, but we decided to bring you the Hotbox Show episode 219 tonight regardless, because there's so much to talk about. And I'm really pleased to have Frank the Tank here with me tonight, and also our darling Amy and Boomschlang as our crew of three tonight, keeping me company here in the studio. I really am missing our other team members, but I'm sure that they're tuning in from wherever, if they've got power left on their phones, and if everything hasn't all gone flat. Well, I have my candle here, and I've got my little trusty solar powered torch, and the dogs are all here, and so we decided to go ahead with the show anyway. There's been so much in the news that this episode of the Hotbox will be a kind of amalgam of the Hotbox Show, Myrtle's rant, and a little bit of update of what's been going on with Fields of Green for All. So last Saturday saw the mass action all around the country, and we were really proud of our cannabis community for coming out in their droves. Some areas had small groups, some areas had larger groups. Cape Town and Pretoria handed over memorandums to various government officials, and we all had a jolly good time and a showing of solidarity that I'm sure you've seen all the way across social media in this last week. And then for our sins, we hit the ground running on Monday, and on Wednesday was a very big day for us here at Fields of Green for All, because we put out our press release and got together a really slick little last minute marketing campaign, because you know the mass action was incredibly necessary, and it happened at exactly the right time. But we had planned to release the news of the trial of the plant to sort of, I think, since about March. Us here at Fields of Green have been speaking to our brothers over at Cullinan's, Paul Michael and Ricky, and we've been chatting about going back to court. There were a whole lot of last straws that really were that thing that just made us realize that it would be the right thing to go back to court. Certainly the Hayes Club case dismissal was one in question, and all around the country we have all sorts of legal stuff going on. We really seem to be driving this country with court cases at the moment, and I've got very mixed feelings about that, because who's going to pay for all of this, and who's going to pay not only in monetary terms but also in terms of the emotional input that goes into things like this, the psychological drain on a lot of us who've been doing this for such a long time. So a lot of thought went into making this decision, and we really did give the government all the chance that they could possibly need to redeem themselves. So yesterday our press release went out, and thank you very much to the various publications that featured these articles prominently on your pages, on your blogs, on your websites, in the print media. Thanks to the Citizen, Maritza Kutza always comes up for the cannabis community. Thanks to Paddy Harbour from Durban, the Mail and Guardian, who interviewed both Paul Michael and myself. Thank you to our amazing Marijuana SA, who have been interviewing Paul Michael, and that interview will come out on Marijuana SA's socials tomorrow, so be sure to watch it, and we'll share that on our socials as well. You know, those amazing guys over there at MJSA are always on it with the news. Also to Brett up there in Limpopo from Cannabis News Africa, if we're hitting it the nail on the head again, and bring to us an amazing article that actually pulled all of these bits together, the mass action, us going back to court, and of course on the day that we went back to court, Neil posted on our groups that the Hayes Club appeal has been successfully launched. Yeah. So today, just to pile it on a bit, we had a lovely meeting with Bernadette Eniver, the defendant in the Labour court case. You know, her appeal is due to go in mid-October. We're going to do a lot more about that on the Haze Club case, on the Hotbox show, just so that everybody can get a broad perspective that we are poking this beast from every single angle that we can. So we'll be in the Labour Court of Appeal here in Johannesburg in the months to come. Maybe only early next year, but we have to get the campaign for that going because it all costs money. But more about that next week. What else did we say we were going to talk about tonight, Amy?
Yeah, the mass action. The mass action.
Yeah. So the mass action last week, I think that it wasn't about being there on the pavement outside Parliament in Cape Town or at your local municipality in Pretoria in front of the union buildings. It was really about boosting the gees of the cannabis community again, and I think that
Just reminding them, yeah.
just reminding people, I mean, what have you seen on your social media feeds with, all of our feeds are a bit wonky at the moment, but I've certainly noticed that a lot more cannabis stuff has been coming up.
Yeah.
On my personal feed, yeah?
Yeah. Everywhere, across the board.
Yeah.
Across the board.
I think that is quite a little test. We've also heard of a lot of events coming up, and I'm sure that next week Jo will be coming up with some events which she posts to the Hotbox socials, the Hotbox podcast socials, all the events. So please do send us your events. You know that there's loads of different channels in which you can do that, because summer is certainly coming. We haven't had rain in Joburg yet, but we're getting there. So the tensions are running high really all around the world as we march towards the end of the year. So for the last 2 days, Charles and myself have been sitting into some meetings that have been happening in Vienna at the International Center. Now, I'm not sure if you remember, but Jules and I used to go every year in March to attend the Commission on Narcotic Drugs. And it's a very important program for Fields of Green for All, because, as we say, we're going to try and poke this beast from all the angles possible. So at 3 times a year, in between the big March meetings, I think Frank wants to go. How about my boy? In between the big March meetings that are held in Vienna every year, they have what is called an intersessional. And these are when all the member states, all the countries that have signed the drug conventions, and all the NGOs and civil society get together in a hybrid fashion now. It's nice to see the halls. We've been watching it online. It's nice to see the halls of Mordor in Vienna actually filling up again compared to earlier this year. So it's been 2 days of meetings listening to answers to this particular question, which I think was a very progressive question for the CND to pose to everybody. The question was, how do we use unconventional means in order to achieve the underlying values of these treaties that we have, the Convention on Narcotic Drugs? How do we acknowledge that there are different ways of doing this job? So the question that they actually posed to all of us was a big long thing like this, and there's absolutely no way that I would remember it now, but you get the gist of it. So when we got this question in our inboxes a couple of months ago, and we were invited to make submissions, which we did, but we weren't chosen to speak, but we were still obviously in the room. The people that they chose to speak and the panelists that they chose were right from the outset fairly progressive. And so we've had 2 days of lots of talk about human rights. And this is on that international level where things are still very conservative and there's still lots of prohibitionists like Iran and Turkey and all of that. China, places, Philippines, people that have really punitive measures against people who use, trade and cultivate illicit crops. It was very heartening to see countries like America, for once, standing up for human rights, and certainly the EU and countries like Australia, New Zealand, even Eastern Bloc countries, lots of the non-EU members of the European countries also signed on to a call for greater human rights when it comes to drug policy. And we had this this watch party that was happening from beamed out alternately from Virginia in the USA and Barcelona. And so where the peanut gallery was sort of commenting all the time. And I must say it was very, very interesting and very heartening to see a shift. So that was happening also in the last 2 days. So it's been crazy, crazy busy here, but also very fruitful. Great to see cannabis back in the media again, and great to be able to even speak to you tonight and tell you what was going on. It wasn't so much a rant, but more just a blah of all
Update.
sorts of news that was coming out.
Yeah.
As usual, this is Myrtle's rant coming to you from the Hotbox Show, live and unscripted. Episode 219, this particularly dark and candlelit evening at the Jazz Farm. So we certainly hope that next week, same place, sometime, we'll have more light and more of my beautiful team members around the table with me. And Amy's got some comments.
Oh, there was just a comment from Just B, and he's
Yes.
away. Finally, I can catch a show live, and I can't thank you guys enough for the support in my court case. It's so worth it to be a member, and the small monthly fee doesn't justify the value of it. I actually feel guilty. So he's saying thank you for help during one of his court cases.
Oh, that's Bernie.
Oh,
That's
really?
Bernie from the Labour
Yeah.
Court.
Oh,
Thanks,
that's
B,
such a
for
nice
watching.
message.
Bernie will certainly be on the show, I think most
Yeah.
probably mid-October,
Great call.
as we get ready to launch her appeal in the Labour Court. So that's going to be very cool to have you around the table, Bernie. So that's me signing off on behalf of the Hotbox Show crew, and we'll see you here next week, we hope, with a bit more light on the subject. So keep it green, and please light one up for Jules, and have a good evening.